Thank you for listening to WJ Talk, the Waterways Journal place for conversations that move the marine and waterways industry forward. Today you'll hear from Dave Murray, Senior Editor for the Waterways Journal, along with Harrison Crabtree, Executive Director of the World Trade Center, New Orleans. They discuss Louisiana's growing role in international trade, maritime commerce, energy, shipbuilding, and aerospace, as well as major port investments, workforce development, and the innovation shaping the state's economic future. The sponsor of this month's interviews is Laborde Products. Laborde Products stands at the forefront of marine engine distribution, committed to delivering excellence as your trusted partner in marine propulsion, featuring top brands including Mitsubishi, Steyr Motors, Yanmar, and Scania Marine.
Good morning. It is July 1st, Wednesday, and this is WJ Talk with the Waterways Journal. My name is David Murray, and we're very privileged to have with us today Harrison Crabtree, who's, I believe, is the Executive Director of the World Trade Center in New Orleans. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And Harrison, you spent a long time also with Greater New Orleans, which is the economic development agency for the New Orleans region. And I previously interviewed Michael Hecht, who you worked with or was your boss at one point. For our listeners, can you just tell us a little bit about the relationship between the World Trade Center and Greater New Orleans? What's the role of each?
Yeah, so the World Trade Center, we were founded actually 80 years ago this year after World War II with the understanding and mission of, free and fair trade would lead to a more prosperous global environment and a safer environment, especially in the aftermath of World War II. We were the very first ever World Trade Center of what is now 300 plus World Trade Centers in 90 plus countries. So it's a very strong point of pride for us. Unlike a lot of World Trade Centers that the listeners may be familiar with, we don't own a building, a hotel, a conference center. Instead, we are an economic development organization. And so about 4 or 5 years ago, we entered into what we call an operational partnership with Greater New Orleans, Inc. And what that does for the World Trade Center is we are a small team, a team of 2. So it allows us to access the really strong team at GNO Inc., everything from marketing and branding, administrative and finance, policy, business development. So it really allows us to focus on our mission as an organization. For GNO Inc., what it does is it gives that organization a truly dedicated international trade arm, focusing on everything from maritime and river commerce to highway and rail to international delegations and trade missions. For us as an organization at the World Trade Center, we are membership supported. So we have over 90 members from across the state of Louisiana. What I really like about our membership base is it's diverse. It really represents the trade ecosystem. So it's everything from our ports to our tug companies to river pilots, but also manufacturers, rail, trucking, legal, banking, and finance. And so it really brings a unique perspective to us as an organization. And we work to really support and promote trade and foreign direct investment across the state of Louisiana. So that's everything from providing membership services to consultations, data, lunch and learns, to policy and advocacy. We were actually in Washington, D.C. last week meeting with our congressional delegation. So also business development, being proactive in attracting trade and foreign direct investment to Louisiana.
You able to host foreign delegations who come to check out the trade opportunities in the New Orleans region?
Yes, so that is a really strong point of pride for us as an organization, being that premier voice for trade. We're fortunate enough to host dozens of foreign delegations to the state. Last year alone, we welcomed over 100 delegations from 25 different countries. So it really helps elevate the brand of Louisiana when we're able to host heads of states, ambassadors, trade agencies, and business delegations to highlight what we're doing here in Louisiana. We found those visits are really productive because a lot of people know our state and our city for our food, our music, our culture, but they don't know us for what we're doing in a business ecosystem. And so being able to show them firsthand what we're doing is really valuable, and it's led to some really positive results.
These last few months and years have been full of turmoil, but also possibility for the maritime sector. We've learned about movements from, Hormuz to the Gulf Coast, New Orleans, but also the entire Gulf Coast with stepped up tanker movements and from Venezuela, and also the growth in the defense industry. Are there any businesses in or business sectors in Louisiana that people might not think of when they, I mean, for instance, where does Louisiana stand in the defense sector among states now?
Yeah, so the defense and aerospace sector is really an interesting one here in Louisiana. It is a very strong sector that I don't think people, when they think of defense and aerospace, and we tend to categorize those two together because they do go hand in hand. But I don't think it's one that people initially think of us as a strong state for that. But we really have a lot of tremendous businesses and assets that are working to grow that sector. A great example is the NASA Michoud Assembly facility out in New Orleans East. Every manned spacecraft has started here in New Orleans. So historically, we've built the big orange external fuel tanks. And now we built the Artemis rocket, so we'll send the next man and woman to the moon, which is a really exciting time for us, but something a lot of people don't realize. Also on the defense side, shipbuilding and vessel construction is something that we are very, very strong in. Going back to World War II, we have a rich legacy of that. And under the Trump administration, with new investments, we see continued growth in that. Everything from building icebreakers for the Canadian, U.S., and Finnish government, which I think is fascinating that here in Louisiana, we're building icebreakers and we've never seen ice on waterways in our lives, to building the next generation of autonomous vessels right here in Louisiana. So I think it really shows that we're able to do it all here in Louisiana, whether it's sending man to the moon or building the next generation of icebreakers. It's really an exciting time for us as a state.
I'm guessing that a lot of these space and aerospace plants are dependent on barge transportation to move their heavy components around.
Absolutely. And there's a reason, if you look at a map of where Michoud Assembly Facility is, it is right on water. It has dock access to be able to move those heavy components into Mississippi and then up to Alabama. So when you think about the defense sector here in Louisiana, it is essential to have waterways. Shipbuilding, I think it's fairly obvious that you have to have water to build ships. You're not going to be building ships inland. And so for us to ensure that our waterways are open and free flowing, it's important for every industry. And that's what's so important about our trade and logistics sector is, highlighting to people that it's not just getting goods on and off ships. It's, the aerospace companies, it's shipbuilding, it's manufacturing, it's the whole ecosystem, it's agriculture that relies on our state's waterways, which makes it so critical. And that's why we see so many investments, is because of our state's waterways.
The waterways have, with all this new investment, including in the oil and gas sector, I imagine that traffic is increasing.
Yes, we see a very healthy amount of traffic. We're seeing a lot of project cargo right now. To be very honest with you, the reason for that being is we have substantial numbers of investment here in Louisiana, a lot of that being driven by the energy sector. If you look at investments over the past, let's say 5 to 10 years, it's about $130 billion in energy investments in Louisiana. That's everything from LNG, oil and gas, hydrogen, batteries, sustainable aviation fuel, biofuels. And so these projects need to get their goods into Louisiana. And a lot of times these cargo is just too big for the roads. And so they're coming in by barge, by ocean-going vessels. And it's really a sight to see when these are being unloaded off of our ships at the ports. And again, it goes to what I said earlier about the whole ecosystem is needed to drive the economy in Louisiana.
It sounds like the energy picture in Louisiana is all of the above. Traditional oil and gas, but also hydrogen and alternative fuels and methanol and everything being developed at once. Is that accurate?
Exactly. Louisiana has taken, under our current administration, a really proactive approach to it all of the above. And we, if it fuels and powers something, you're going to see it here in Louisiana, which I think is really exciting. To what you mentioned, we've got facilities that are turning sugarcane waste into biofuels. We've got facilities that are producing hydrogen and LNG for Europe. So we are really powering the world. These are projects that are not just for Louisiana, not just for the United States, but for the whole world. And what I think that really highlights the importance of our state is we are not just a local serving economy. We are really powering, we also say fueling the world.
Does the World Trade Center follow closely Governor Landry's initiative to consolidate the ports and make them work more closely together? Do you have any role in that, or do you just observe it?
Yeah, so we work closely with all five ports along the lower Mississippi River. And I don't know if consolidate is the fair word. I think it's more of a coordination effort. We've historically seen our ports really kind of work on their own path, their own mission, their own projects. But under Governor Landry, under Department of Transportation here in Louisiana, we have seen a really concerted effort by our ports to work together, realizing that together as one, working together, we are the largest port system in the Western Hemisphere. And so I think a lot of credit goes to our port systems, our port directors, our five port directors who have really worked well together to understand each other's strengths, but also to understand each other's weaknesses and see where can they work together for the betterment of Louisiana. So whether that's on a marketing plan or on messaging that's coordinated, we've seen really positive movement on that front.
I understand that there's a certain amount of competition between Houston, New Orleans, and Mobile for certain types of cargoes. I just talked to Michael Hecht about it, but is the pie expanding enough where it's growing for everybody?
Yeah, I can't speak necessarily to the other ports. I don't know their data, but I think the pie is certainly growing here in Louisiana. I think what makes us so unique compared to, let's say, a Mobile especially, we're able to do it all. So whether you're talking about container, bulk, break bulk, liquid bulk, agriculture, we're able to capture it all in our ports. And I think that goes to our previous kind of topic of working together, realizing that we have a strength that very few ports in the U.S. are able to compete with us. And so when we're working together, it's really a powerful tool for us.
What investments in ports and waterways are you particularly looking forward to? Michael Hecht mentioned this bridge with the air clearance and developing the ports below the bridge.
Yeah, I think the most exciting one that I'm looking forward to, and I think the most generational investment is the Louisiana International Terminal. And so for those that are unfamiliar with that, that is going to be a downriver container terminal operated by the Port of New Orleans. The current issue we have is if you've ever been to New Orleans and you're at the French Quarter, you're at Jackson Square, you see this bridge that goes across the river. Well, the current container terminal sits upriver from that. And a lot of times we are restricted in the size of vessel and the height that we can accept. So this downriver terminal will be able to accept some of the largest ships in the world with no height restrictions. And so it's really going to be a powerful opportunity for us. As I understand it, this is one of the only, greenfield terminal investments in the United States right now, and it probably could be the last. As we all know, there's not much land left on water, and so it's really exciting for us to really plant our flag back in the ground as a container hub for Louisiana. So this is, as I mentioned, a generational investment for us, and really, it's gonna change the game for Louisiana.
Of course, agriculture exports have always been important to New Orleans. I believe they are one of the, if not the top ag exporting port in the world. Is that right?
Yeah, so ag exports here in Louisiana are a huge commodity. About 60% of all United States agricultural exports pass through, specifically the Port of South Louisiana, but also the Port of New Orleans as well. So it's really important for us. And it goes to my point earlier when we talk about the importance of our state's port systems. We are fueling and powering the world, or feeding and fueling the world. And so for us, a lot of the country relies on our port system. When you talk about having access to 30 plus U.S. states and 2 Canadian provinces via navigable waterways, what happens down here in South Louisiana impacts a lot of the country. And so it's important for us to continue investing in our ports as a state and as a country, because if we're not able to get the grain, the fuel out of our ports, it's going to impact a lot of the United States.
To make up.
Yeah, I think this is another big opportunity for us, especially on the LNG side. We see a lot of those commodities going to Europe, especially Northern Europe, Germany, Antwerp, and Rotterdam. I think those trends are here to stay. You see continued investment amongst our states, or amongst our LNG companies specifically. Lake Charles is where you see a lot of those investments, but also at the mouth of the river with Venture Global. And again, a lot of these companies are going on to phase two. And so these people are a lot smarter than I am. They have a lot more money in the game than I am. So I think when you see these multinational companies like the Woodside Energy out of Australia committing billions of dollars to Louisiana, that is a long-term investment, and not one just for the next 5 years. So I think those, especially LNG, is here to stay for the long run.
Does your organization concern itself with workforce development, or is that other organizations that have that focus?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are very active on the workforce development side, especially our partners on the GNOing side. We as an organization find it very important to make sure our workforce has the right skills to access these jobs. About 1 out of every 5 jobs in Louisiana is in the trade sector. But I think what's even more important about that is those jobs pay about 15 to 16% higher than non-trade dependent industries. So these are really good opportunities for pathways to success for our region's workforce. And so we work very actively, especially being a convener between industry partners, or 2 and 4 year schools and nonprofit workforce trainers, to make sure that both sides are talking to each other and that what our students are learning aligns with what the industry needs. So for us, it's very important to continue to hammer down the importance of workforce, especially as we all know, this industry is getting older, and we have to find the next generation of workforce, because if we don't, we can't grow the industry.
Right. Nothing happens without those workers. What are some of the most important pipelines in the region that channel students into maritime and trade-related fields? Because a lot of jobs in the state are maritime adjacent, even if they're not directly maritime.
Yeah, so we have a number of both 2 and 4 year schools who are really doing some outstanding work here in Louisiana. So both Nunez and Delgado, North Shore Technical Community College, and River Parishes all have workforce training programs that directly translate to the maritime and trade logistics sector. At the 4 year level, we have University of New Orleans here in New Orleans, who has one of only a handful of maritime engineer or shipbuilding majors in the country, which is really an impressive asset. But it makes sense here in Louisiana when we talk about building ships. And then really exciting coming online in the next year or so is Nicholls State is going to have a maritime academy. The issue we have in Louisiana, to be very honest and blunt with you, is a lot of our mariners have to go to either Texas or Michigan to train, which makes no sense. When we talk about the amount of opportunity that's here in Louisiana, we want to keep those students here. And so that program is going to be critical for training the next generation of mariners and keeping them here in Louisiana.
It sounds great to have more training in state. Is there anything else we haven't discussed, Harrison, that is coming in the future to advance your organization's goals and the economic well-being of the state that we haven't talked about yet, or that is an encouraging development?
Yeah, I think really the biggest takeaway I take from the sector here in Louisiana is just the momentum. And it's a diverse momentum. It's not just the Louisiana International Terminal. It's not just energy. It's not just aerospace and defense. It is the whole ecosystem that is really working in tandem that we haven't seen before. I think another thing that we're starting to see, our companies really embraces innovation. It's something we haven't done a lot of in the past, but we've seen over the past year or so, a lot of companies starting to look at modernizing technology that's going to improve efficiency, but also planting their flag in that. So it's not just talking about procuring technology. We're talking about these companies creating technology, whether it's AI, robotics, a really cool initiative in the Port of New Orleans and a freight forwarder in the New Orleans Public Belt was creating AI to make sure that schedulers are aligning better. And so I think there's a lot of innovation to be had in our state that if you watch over the next couple of years, I think is really going to start to take off. A lot of that has been championed by the state economic development. LED has a full innovation arm that is really focusing on a lot of our legacy industries and embracing technology and innovation. So that's one of those things that we haven't talked about that I really think is going to be exciting over the next few years.
Becoming an innovation center or powerhouse.
Absolutely.
In a lot of different areas. That's exciting to hear. Do you get visits from foreign ports and port districts looking at what you guys are doing in the Port of New Orleans?
Absolutely. We've hosted a number of us. When you think of the large European ports, we've hosted them. We actually had Port of Rotterdam in about a year ago, talking about specifically energy investments. We're continuously talking with the Port of Antwerp, Bruges, probably on a weekly, monthly basis, talking about opportunities there. But we also go to them. We've done trade missions to the Port of Antwerp, the Port of Rotterdam. We've also been to the Port of Montreal, and we're actually going to be going to the Port of Marseille here in the next few months. So for us, it's important to get to them to see as well, because a lot of those ports are doing some really interesting and innovative things. And we want to take some of that knowledge and know-how and bring it back here to Louisiana. So it's really important for us to do that two-way exchange, show off what we're doing, but also go to them to see what they're doing.
It's interesting because I know that Antwerp and Rotterdam have been dealing with high congestion. There's such a dense area, and they've been struggling with barge movements and putting in systems to address that better.
Absolutely. It's the seeing the traffic at specifically those two ports is really impressive. Those are well-oiled machines in massive facilities. So it's always good to see them firsthand.
Of course, we also have competitors coming up in South America that are looking at the way we manage our ports, including New Orleans, and imitating it and boosting their game.
Absolutely. I always like to think if somebody's copying us, it means we're doing something well, or if they're taking best practices from us. So we're always happy to tell the world what we're doing well, because I think that's imitation is the greatest form of flattering. So for us, we're always happy when people are taking our ideas.
Harrison, I can't think of anything else to ask you. Is there anything else I should be asking about that we haven't covered yet?
No, I think that covers it all. Really appreciate you having me, and looking forward to sharing our story as a state. I think, as I mentioned, over the next few years, I think once we get lit up and running, a lot of these energy projects are going to be, finalized and constructed. So there's a lot of excitement in Louisiana in the logistics sector.